Hi, it's Paula from Pola Quilting. Welcome back to my channel. Today another project from Magic Numbers trays from my scrap buckets with the pre-cuts. If you are new here and you haven't heard about the Magic Numbers, I will put some links in the description to the article and some other tutorials where you can find out more about that. We will be working on a quite classic block, however we'll add a little bit of twist there. And like I said, I'm just using scraps from my Magic Numbers trays, so it's nice scrappy project to make. So for each of the blocks I will need a few shapes from my boxes. So let me just quickly divide those two. So those are two blocks kind of here, materials prepared for. I will need 6.5 inch solid fabric and 4.5 inch solid fabric. If you can pull the same color, if you cannot, at least color coordinate them like I did here. So those are not the same fabrics, but they are close enough. Then I will need two 6.5 inch in contrasting fabric, and I'm going with the floral here, but obviously you can have anything. Again, if you cannot pull the same two fabrics, just try to color coordinate them together. That doesn't have to be the same. And then 4.5 inch square with some contrasting fabric to this one, so something that will pop up from this color. And I've got blues for this pair, and this will be my 4.5 inch square. Later we will also need some strips, 2.5 inch strips, and some 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares, because we will be adding sashing between those blocks. So step one, it's very easy. Actually the whole block is quite easy to make, at least I find it quite easy. You want to take your main color and your background color, the solid ones, put it together. This is kind of type of batik fabric, so the color is the same on both sides, but obviously if they are proper fabrics, then you want to pair them up right sides together, and we'll stitch all around it. Basically we are making 4 at a time half square triangles. So nothing complicated here, 1/4 inch allowance. To be fair, with this one, even if it's not quarter, it will be fine too, because that gives we'll be squaring them up to 3.5 inch, those half square triangles, and that gives us a lot of allowance there. So very stress free here. Okay, I've got my square stitched all around, so I want to divide it on diagonal in both directions. Again, don't worry about precision here that much, because we have plenty of allowance on both sides of that block, so no problem there. So you would obviously like to turn your cutting board to go to the other side. I just, for recording, cannot do that, but here we go. So I've got my 4 half square triangles. I will take it to the iron and iron it. Now, because they are here on bias, so they may stretch, so don't stretch the fabric. The good tip for ironing half square triangles is that you take it to the iron, you put the iron on top first, then open it up whilst it's a little bit warm, and just pat it gently with your fingers here on the seam before you start ironing. So pat it, make it nice and flat, and then you just put the iron on top and it will be all good. So I will take it all and iron to be ready for the next step. Okay, they are back from the ironing, and I want to square them up, and I want to square them up to match with this square. So this is again Magic Numbers in work. So this is 6.5 inch square, unfinished 6 inch finished block. So if I want to put 2 blocks here for 6 finished, that would have been 3 plus the extra allowance for seams, so that means I need to trim my blocks to 3.5 inches square. And like I said, there's a plenty of extra space here, so you don't have to worry that kind of you have to go exactly with that trimming here. I just aligned my ruler here on the line, on diagonal line with the seam. You might have other ruler which is better for doing half square triangles. I don't have any of those, I just use normal ruler. Then I can turn around. Now align my 3.5 inches on the line I trimmed before here. This line, diagonal line, still matching, and I can trim it off. So I will do that now with all of the other half square triangles. And also with this background fabric, the smaller one, I also want to trim it to 3.5. They all need to match. Now what I cut from this ones, they're actually quite nice sizes to add to my bucket with the adding tape project. So nothing disappears from here. It's just moving from place to place. Okay, all of my blocks are squared up and we are ready to place them for sewing. So big one first, opposite I will put my just plain green here, and then we're adding the pose. Here we go. I always remember that with this fabric here I want to have something what is not the same, so that's how I remember how to place them. And here we go. So it will be easy to sew as a four patch, but I first would need to sew those two together and those two together, and then I can make a 4 patch from the remaining shapes. Okay, I'll just cut that first bit here out of the chain piecing. So this is how it goes back to the block, and I can start making my 4 patch now. And I cut the second bit, which would have been here, and that's the second part of my 4 patch here. If that confuses you how I'm going with that kind of moving those beads around to make the 4 patch, after you've sewn those strips from both sides here, or those squares, just put them back on your table and then start on your 4 patch. Here we go, and my block is just needing one more seam allowance here, and we're ready with the main part of the block, but there's still one detail we need to add. Here we go, that's almost finished block, needs ironing, but before I go and do that, I've got that 4.5 inch extra square I was talking about, which is contrasting to this main fabric. So I just want to fold it into half on diagonal. You can take it to the iron now to kind of press it if you like to, and I will put my raw edges together with the raw edges of my square. You can use a pin here if you like to hold it in place, and I will just baste it very close to the edge. So it's not a 1/4 inch here, it's probably 8 or something like that. It's just something that 1/4 inch allowance will later hide. So I'm just starting above the tip of the triangle there, and I'm just going down very close to the edge. Now I can remove my pin, and what I want to do is fold that into inside that edge here, make a curve here. So it's that cathedral windows technique here I'm using. Again, you could take it to the iron to kind of iron that crease here before you start stitching, if that helps. You can put a pin there as well to hold it in place whilst you working through it. Whatever helps you, you can do it here. I'll just put a pin. Now don't worry if that kind of comes off here, you can trim it later. It doesn't have to match to anything later either, so we'll be alright. So I'm just starting from the top, and where you want to stitch depends again on your preference. You can stitch on this edge, you can stitch on this edge where the crease is, you can stitch on both, you can use decorative stitch in the middle, whatever you feel like doing. I'm just stitching on the edge on the crease. Okay, So that's one block done. I will make a few more and I will pop them on the design board, and I will show you where we will add our sashing and our cornerstones to make it a final block. I won't be, however, stitching them together because it's a part of the bigger pattern I'm working on, so I'll be using those blocks and the pattern will come soon, so hopefully you will stay in touch to be able to see that pattern as well. Okay, few more blocks and the design board. Before I show you my finished project, just a quick reminder where you can find me and how you can support my work. You can subscribe to my website to be notified when new tutorials, products or patterns are released. You can find me on my Facebook page, Pola Photo, or you can join my group page, Pola Quilting with Friends, where we all share work made inspired by my tutorials and answer any questions you may have. There is Instagram account called Pola Quilting, and if you like to share something you made based on my tutorials, please tag me using hashtag Pola Quilting with Friends. To support my work, please like, comment and share when you see my posts or tutorials. Let your quilting friends know about this channel and invite them to the group and subscribe to my channel. If you like to contribute extra, you can use super thanks on YouTube or buying me virtual tea, coffee or lunch available on my page. All links are in the description below. I would like to thank you all for all the support so far and letting me grow in what I do. Just to let you know, there is now another incentive to join my newsletter. So back in November, as you remember, I was one of the presenters on the Scrappy Summit, which was a great success. A lot of people happy with joining us. So I decided to make my own presentation available to those who join my newsletter. So once you confirm your subscription, you will receive a document with a link to my presentation. Be sure to save that document for future reference. And if you already joined my newsletter, a link to the presentation will be included in the next few newsletters, so you will have access to it as well. Before I show you blocks with sashing, please have a look at some other options of how this can be laid out. Definitely they will look great on their own. I don't, however, place the cathedral part next to each other, as that might create a little bit of bulk, and I will show you later the sashing to go with it. It will also look great blended with other crumb blocks or plain squares. You can really mix and match them with other type of the blocks. Here's the layout of the sashing. So if you take 2.5 inch strip and cut it into half, so you will have a 1 1/4 sash to put in between the kind of 4 poles. And then you can use 2.5 inch square to create cornerstones, so you will have 4 out of that one small square. So each narrow strip will need to be 9.5 inch long, because that's how the individual bear paw is sized. And on my example I used plain fabric for this, but you can always use some plain-ish printed fabric as well, or to be fair, you just need to kind of check and see what you like with them to make the best out of it. You want to create some contrast there, so blocks are visible, so that's the only kind of rule to go with. So, and for each section of 4 where you have that one big block with that small sashing in it, I would use 2.5 inch strip to make another layer of that sashing, and the strips will need to be 10 1/4, and then obviously you will use 2.5 squares for the cornerstones. You can use the same color for the cornerstones, or you can use different colors, so depend what you put there, it will the kind of the output will be different. So there's lots of variety there, so you can have lots of fun experimenting. You could also use one long strip for the wider sashing, but I find this method with like a long strip quite difficult. Using cornerstones makes my sewing more precise, and nothing is, you know, bowing or kind of comes too short or some ruffles somewhere. So if you have issues with borders or long strips in between the rows or columns, I recommend this tutorial I've recorded some time ago. I use this method all the time in my sewing, and I'm happy with the results. I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial straight from magic number trace for this smiley bear paw block. Please let me know in the comments which layout you like the best. Feel free to add any questions, and I hope you will come back to see more. Thank you for watching. I hope you will share this tutorial, subscribe if you haven't done so. Happy sewing and see you next time.